So, what are all these black box testing techniques? So, let me close this one. Let me make a note. Okay, 23/11/2023. So, here, BBT techniques. Why we need a technique? So, guys, you all know that in order to complete a particular work in an effective way, definitely if you know these techniques, we can easily, okay, we can easily deal with it. Okay, we can easily accomplish that particular task. Techniques helps us in getting the things in an efficient way within a short span of time, right? Within a short span of time, you can complete it if at all you know the techniques basically. A similar way, it's not at all possible for us to test entire application. Hence, entire application within the given timeline. Basically, they won't give that much timelines for us to test that application. In order to test the application effectively within a limited amount of time frame, definitely we need those techniques, and those techniques that we are using as part of the black box testing are black box testing techniques. So the equivalence class partition, boundary value analysis, decision table analysis, state transaction, and as well as a use case analysis. Let me show you a simple example so that we can better understand the first technique. See here, consider that we as an organization developed this search field, and as per the requirement we have given that it accepts 0 to 9 special numbers. Okay, it accepts 0 to 9. If you enter anything in between 0 to 9, successfully entered numbers will show up. And if you enter all the lower cases, A, B, C, D, E, F, if you enter these lower cases, successfully entered lower cases should display. And if you enter the special character, the upper cases, successfully entered uppercase should display. If you enter any special characters are not allowed will display for us. Okay, special characters are not allowed display for us. See, consider that if you enter anything from 0 to 9, no matter whatever the chunk that you are entering, 0 to 9, the same output you are getting. So here, the same way, if you enter anything from small a to small z, even the same output, and capital A to capital Z, even the same output will occur. So, in order to test from 0 to 9, consider that 10 times we need to enter a value. The similar way, in order to check the lower cases again, alphabets are at 26. 26 times we need to enter value into the field. Again, the uppercase also you need to enter for 26 times, and the special characters maybe 40 special characters. Okay, 40 times we need to enter a value. Altogether, 100 times we need to enter a value into the text field, which might need around 4 hours of time for us to test only this field itself. To test only this particular field, we need a 4 hours of time. Okay, so we need a 4 hours of time. That's the reason instead of dealing in this particular way, we are using some black box testing techniques here. Rather than spending these many hours of time using technique, we can reduce that. Equivalence class partition. What it is saying is identify the data and make sure that you have a data in the form of groups, and each group will have or will give you same output. The entire group, if at all you are considering it as a one group, if you enter any value from the group will give you the same outcome. This technique, what it is saying is, instead of a testing on all the values in the group, pick only one value and test it. Okay, just pick only one value and test that particular group, which we call it as an equivalence class partition. Consider that 0 to 9 is a group. In 0 to 9, I am entering 5. And small a to small z, I am entering a n. Capital A to capital Z, I am entering m. And a special character, I am entering 2. Altogether, I was just entering a 5 values into that, which may take 10 minutes of time to complete that activity. Earlier, we were spending around 4 hours of time. Now we are completing it within the 10 minutes of time, with which we are using, with the help of this equivalence class partition technique. The ultimate objective here is, using this technique, we are testing that particular field where what exactly we are doing, identifying the data in the form of a groups, and we are make sure that these group will give you a same outcome. Instead of testing on all the values, we are just entering with only one value, and you are checking that a whole chunk, which itself we call it as a group. Okay, which itself we call it as a group, guys. Equivalence class partition. Any doubts on this one? Everyone? Perfect.
No, no, sir. Thank you.
Done the deal. And then the next one here is a boundary value analysis. Ideally, in the real world, developer usually commit mistakes at boundary conditions. Okay, usually developer can do some mistakes at the boundary conditions. That's the reason we will check how the application is working at those boundaries. How exactly it's working at those boundaries. Surendra, can you please elaborate more on this one with a simple example? Yes, let us see with a simple example here. Consider that we have a Sneha and she want to create a website, and using that website they will offer personal loans. And consider that she wants to give the personal loans only for the people who are staying in a Bangalore city. Okay, for the people who are staying in this city itself, she wanna give a loan, the personal loan, only for this city people. What she did, before approaching our organization, she did some research and got to know below statistics. What are all those statistics? 90% of the people in the city are having a salary of 10,000 Indian rupees per month. 5% of the people are having salary greater than 10,000 rupees per month, and only 5% of the people are having a salary less than 10,000 rupees per month. Excuse me. So with that, what she have identified is 90% of the people are having 10,000 and 5% of the people are having a 10,000, more than 10,000. What she decided is, she gave a requirement to our company stating that, to IBM, that, buddy, I want a website where person can apply for a loan A person from Bangalore city can apply for a loan whose salary is greater than or equal to 10,000 rupees per month. This is what the requirement she has given to our company, guys. So, okay. So, as per her requirement, 95% of the people are having this. Hence, majority of the people can access her application. Okay, majority of the people can access that particular application and they can get the loans. And developer, while developing the application, they have implemented just greater than and they forgot to keep equal to there. What it will happen? This website will work only for the people whose salary is greater than 10,000, which means just 5% of the people can use this software. Remaining 90% are not able to use. Okay, remaining 90% are not able to use, which is a huge, okay, which is a huge issue for her business, right? Which is gonna be a huge issue for her business or a huge impact for the business. So that's the reason whenever they have given these kind of a specific conditions, we as a testers need to test at the boundary value minus one and a boundary value plus one, and we will check how the application is working. So we will check at 9,999 and see how exactly the application is working. We will see at 10,000 how the application is working, at 10,001 how the application is working. Also, we will see here as part of this particular chunk. Okay, as part of this particular chunk, we are going to study this thing as well. That's what the ultimate point of this boundary value analysis is. We need to keep a boundary conditions in mind and we just need to validate that. So let me give you another example, guys. For the Gmail account creation, they have a given a age restriction as 18 years. So how this is gonna work, the boundary conditions, you can check at a 18 years, you can check at a 17 years, and you can check at 19 years. 18 and a 19, it will work. For 17 years, whenever the people are entering, it won't work. Okay, for 17 years, it won't work. That's what the ultimate point which you need to consider, guys. Clear? Is this boundary value analysis clear for you all or any doubts? Good enough. Considering your silence as a good enough. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. The next one is a decision table. So consider that A and B, Boolean conditions if you remember. If the A value is true and the B value is true, then the outcome of A and B is true always. Right? If A is true, B is true, the outcome of A and B is always true. For suppose, consider this one A, A as a username text field, username value, B as a password value. So A as a username pass value, B as a password value, and A and B as a login status. P means a valid, false means invalid. See guys, I'm just rewriting that username, password, login status. If you have a given a valid username, okay, if you have a given a valid username and a password, then your login is a success. If you have a given a valid username and an invalid password, your login is a failed. If you have a given an invalid username and a valid password, then your login is a failed. If you have a given invalid username and as well as an invalid password, then also your login is a failed. So ultimately, this combination, if you compare with this Boolean, of course, we are using these combinations in the real world. Okay, got it? Or any doubts on this point, guys? Everyone, is this point clear for you? Okay, so wherever the possible combinations are there, you need to test with all the possible combinations. Immediately, a quick question that comes in our mind. Surendra, I'm checking with a valid credentials, I'm getting a confirmation message, I'm logging in. Then why we need to check with an invalid? See, basically, whenever you enter the invalid credentials, ideally it should show up some error messages. Maybe developer may not add those error messages. If at all, see, as a user, if at all you are entering the wrong credentials and if it is not showing anything for you, how would you understand that whether you enter an invalid credentials? For these invalid credentials, which is a negative scenario, even it should show up the error messages so that anyone by looking into the error messages, they can easily understand what they made a wrong out over there. So that's the reason this is an important thing. So the ultimate point here is this decision table analysis precisely you need to focus more in that particular area where you need to check it out the multiple combinations. Okay. The state transaction analysis and a use case analysis. The state transaction. For every user action, whether application is changing the state or not. For every user action, whether system is giving appropriate response or not. See, ultimately, both are checking one and the same. These two techniques are checking one and the same. Whether the application is navigating, okay, whether the application is navigating to the next screen or not, we are just checking here. Okay, we are just checking here whether the application is navigating to the appropriate screen or not. See, a simple example, guys. Okay, ideally, I can compare this one that for every action, there should be a response from your application. See, consider ATM machine as an example. If you insert your card into ATM machine, what it should happen, guys? It should populate options. It should show up options. If you select one option, again, the further option should display. The same thing is gonna happen here also. The same thing is gonna happen here also. For every action that you are doing on the browser, whether the system is giving appropriate response or not, we are going to validate that. Okay, whether the system is giving an appropriate response or not, that we are gonna validate here. That's it, guys. This is all about the further two techniques. Okay, this is all about the further two techniques. Good enough. These are the various black box techniques that we have. Okay, Surendra, we studied about these black box techniques. Where are we using that? While writing down further test cases, we will use these techniques and we will write our test cases. So we don't know anything about a test cases for now, that we will see moving ahead with some better examples so that you can understand that. So these are the various black box testing techniques that we have. You guys need to remember these techniques so that you can easily test that particular application. Perfectly all right. So guys, we studied about an exhaustive testing, we studied about a black box testing techniques. So guys, a small example I want to give here. If you remember SDLC example, which is a construction of a house. In the construction of a house, I have explained you the various stages like choose a land, purchase a land, choose a civil engineer, give a contract to him. Among all those things, consider choose a civil engineer task is there. How we will be choosing the civil engineer? This is a high level terminology, but internally, what are you doing in order to choose a civil engineer means put a note about this requirement in a paper or internal references. Filter resumes. Just I'm giving a random example, guys. Filter resumes, and after that, do an interview with that person and then approve him. Prepare a code, then prepare a contract form, then give contract. So, which means that choosing a civil engineer is a simple task, but internally it does has a multiple activities involved. The similar way, SDLC does has a testing as a phase, but internally testing does has multiple activities involved. Those activities we call it as a sdlc, which is a software testing life cycle. Okay, which is a software testing life cycle. Okay, this itself is a software testing life cycle, stlc, which is a software testing life cycle. In order to test an application, in order to test an application, what are all the various stages that involved in testing an application would fall under a software testing lifecycle. Okay, what are all the various stages involved in testing a software application, which we call it as an STLC, which is a software testing life cycle. The software testing life cycle was broadly categorized into various stages, which is test planning, test analysis, test analysis, test design, test execution, and finally the last phase is a test closure. Planning, analysis, design, execution, and a closure. These are the various STLC activities that we have in a real life. So each and every phase has an individual activities and individual resources will play a crucial role here. As part of the today's session, we will see what is the significance of all these phases that we have. What is the significance of the planning? What is the significance of an analysis, design, execution, and closure? Let us see the individual activities in detail for now. What is a test planning phase? As part of this particular test planning phase, lead, a lead or a manager will play a crucial role here. A crucial role. They will play a crucial role. What they are gonna do? They are gonna prepare, plan, and approach for testing the application. For this application, in order to test, what is our plan? A plan includes what are all the things that we are testing on an application, how many number of resources are working on the application, what exactly the software that we need, what is the minimum hardware that we need, all the details we are gonna list it down as part of this test planning phase, and this is driven by your lead or a manager. Okay, cool. So the next one is a test analysis. Prior, before moving into the analysis, guys, a planning. So immediately a question that comes in our mind, Surendra, is it really required to do a proper planning? What happens if at all we are not doing with the planning? Let me give you an example, guys. Consider that in the month of December, we have a bunch of holidays. Surendra and Subhash, they are planning for an individual vacations with their family. What Surendra does, as he knows that December is a time off and he wants to go for a vacation, in the month of September itself, he decided what are all the places he wants to travel. He booked flights and accommodations everywhere. He booked it. And what Subhash does, he didn't book anything. And in the month of December, when he tried to book something, all the prices are in a high, and hence he didn't go to vacation. He didn't go to vacation. But in the example, if you observe, as Surendra did a thorough planning, he completed his vacation in an effective way. So, not only for this vacation, guys, in the real world, whenever you are working on your application, if you do a proper planning, then only the things will be delivered in an effective way. So, the planning is required. And then the test analysis phase. See, basically, if we understand more about the requirement, then only we can test it in a better way. Without understanding the requirement, how can we test it? Right? How can we test it if at all we are not understanding what exactly the customer is asking? See, another example here in this case, guys. So again, Suren and Subhash. Okay, so they both are planning to purchase iPhone 14 Pro Max. What Surendra did, he did some analysis in the market. What exactly the various features that we have in an iPhone 14 Pro Max? What is the budget? How to use those features? Everything he did an analysis and he was waiting for the mobile. And once he got a mobile, he explored all the features in that mobile and he is using it. Which means Surendra is justifying for the amount whatever he has a pay. Whereas moving on to the Subhash, he didn't did any analysis on that particular mobile. Once he purchased that mobile, he is just using it for calling and receiving the calls purpose. Other than that, he is not doing anything. Then there is no point of spending this much of amount on an iPhone 14 Pro Max. So the point here is who is dealing this mobile in an effective way? The person who did some analysis prior, he is handling the mobile in a better way. Similar way, a good tester will do an analyzing factor on that particular requirement first. What they are asking, what we are developing, what are all the possible positive cases from this, what are all the possible negative cases from this requirement. Everything we will study as part of this particular analysis phase itself. In the analysis phase, we will try to understand the application in a better way. Okay, guys. In the analysis phase, we will try to understand the application in a better way. That's what the ultimate point that we need to consider. Perfectly all right. Then the next thing that we need to consider here is a test design phase. In the test design phase, we use it to prepare test scenarios and a test cases. Okay, we use it to prepare and a test cases. This is what to test and how to test will be written as part of this activity. What we need to test and how exactly we need to test it will be defined as part of this test design activity depending on the organization to organization. They have their own process and we need to follow that particular process. At the test execution phase, once after a developer confirms that, buddy, I'm done with the development, then we will go ahead and we will test that particular chunk from our end. And if at all any failures are there, we will report those failures to the developer. Okay, we will report those defects to the developer. Okay, we will report those defects to the developer. That's it. And as part of the test closure phase, okay, that's gonna be the closure. In the closure phase, we will prepare all the reports, all the summary of the testing activities what we have done. How many test cases were created, how many were passed, how many were failed, how many defects were created, how many were passed, how many were failed. A detailed execution summary would be prepared as part of this particular closing activity. But in general, if someone is referring to a word testing means internally it does has all these five activities in a hidden mode. It does has all these five activities in a hidden mode. Planning, analysis, design, execution, and a closure. These are all the five different activities that we have in the hidden mode. Clear everyone what exactly this STLC is or any doubts on that? So Surendra, are we not gonna cover in detail explanation about these phases? If it is your question, the answer is we are gonna cover individual session on the individual phases. For the analysis or a test planning phase, we will see how exactly the test plan looks like, how exactly the test strategy looks like. We will see those documents as part of this planning phase. Okay, we are gonna study those things. Perfect. Done the deal. Any further questions for me before moving on with the further chat? Okay, good. Considering your silence as a good enough, kindly go ahead and watch this video and come up with the questions. What are all the questions that you have? Come up with the questions so that we can discuss these questions and then we can jump on to the next concepts. Okay, done the deal.